Hello there, welcome to a Second Thoughts overview of the Sisters of the Twilight of the Wood Elves. I played through the initial turns, got a real feel for the faction, its strengths and weaknesses, so I'll talk about those in this video and give you some army compositions as well later on. Like always, not an in-depth guide, but will give you a lot of information to play the faction. So let's play then with the Sisters of Twilight of the Wood Elves. So for your short victory condition, you will need to perform 2 rituals of the World Root Healing and to occupy Loot Razor Sack 30 different settlements. So achieving this, the reward is +3 hero capacity for all heroes. I always like to say, useful to ensure that you also don't need too many buildings. And this is actually quite important for the Wood Elves as well, because they don't have that many buildings to augment that capacity. So this way you can have enough scouts or heroes in your armies. Now this is quite a short victory indeed. You do have free reign where you go for the second tree at least, given the World Roots ideas, so it's very good in terms of replay value as well. Now, the long victory requires you to of course achieve the short victory condition, to occupy Loot Razor Sack 70 different settlements, and then win the following battle, the Defense of the Oak, and perform the Ritual of Rebirth. This is also, you need to perform, 8 rituals of the World Roots Healing. So basically 8 of these trees, you need to heal them up. That's in essence what you need to do. Now, the reward is +10 hero recruit rank, which is also helpful, giving you good casters or heroes right as you recruit them into the late game or domination victories. Now, long victory is very long. It does take some time to accomplish, will require to be in a lot of places at the same time. It's achievable though, certainly interesting like the other Wood Elf victories. So, the Sisters of Twilight are the Mage Queen's authority. They can use the Forge of Death to craft and upgrade unique weapons, armor, items. They also have +10% ammunition for all armies, which is excellent, and the ability Volley of Kernes for Hawk Rider units. I like that this ability is for every single army instead of just for their army, so that's really cool. That means that Hawk Riders overall for the faction are much better, in a much better idea to use. Now, climate is really not an issue for the Wood Elves. You can go anywhere you wish. This is really great so that it allows you to conquer the whole map if you want, or of course, you know, go to any forest that you wish to resolve it, to basically fix it. In essence, I'm forgetting the word here. So to complete the ritual of. So this is quite cool for a good replay value as well as you achieving the global map completion really. So your starting location in the Witchwood may seem in the middle of some enemies, really, but it is rather easy to control around it and to defend in just a few turns after you start. Therefore, you are then free to expand at your will, easily. Now, typical expansion with Wood Elves is tricky. It depends on which second and third and fourth trees you actually want to go for, but still controlling the areas around the Witchwood should be pretty standard. You'll likely have to face the Vampire Coast nearby, Silostra, Direfin. You likely have to face Taurox, but after that you're probably a little bit more keen to go and pursue your victory objectives. So definitely you should explore what types of bonuses you get from completely, for healing the specific forests, okay, so that you can continue your conquests. But yeah, in the beginning, just around the Witchwood, that's basically it. Diplomatically, you're part of the Order Tide of sorts, so Wood Elves can definitely walk the line between good and evil easily. Like you can see here that I have, some non-aggression pacts with these guys, because I'm fighting who? I'm fighting Dark Elves in the beginning, I'm fighting Greenskins, Skavens soon follow. It's fairly typical that you'll make friends with those that are at war with them. That includes, of course, Order line factions. So outposts, therefore, should go into any artillery that you can have, maybe from the Dwarves, from the Empire, even from the Bretonnia if they have nothing else. But considering getting some interesting flying units from Bretonnia if you manage, or they're good cavalry, especially considering your Legendary Lord's abilities. In terms of mechanics, first and most importantly, the trees. Everything is based around these magical forests that you can see here. They're spread around the world, as you can see, and you'll need to control everything around them in order to heal them, regardless of who's owning those territories. So this may imply that you get at war with multiple foes, and sometimes in multiple fronts and different alignments even. So what you're doing is healing them in order to then make a ritual of rebirth for the tree itself. This will imply giving you some powerful rewards. For instance, I'll do the ritual rebirth here, and these are the abilities that I'll get with that temple. So that is excellent. That implies that you can get, you know, specific buildings that will change how you completely change how you proceed. And you can see those effects here as well, because these will give research rate, global recruitment capacity, so it's tons of buffs that you can get for your campaign, and they're all different in terms of the specific one that you get. For instance, if I wanted to get more diplomatic relations with the High Elves, then I would go here. If I wanted to get more diplomatic relations with Tomb Kings, maybe that's an idea here, and more unit experience per turn for units. So every single one of them has specific ones. So more casualty replenishment rate, look there. So that's the sort of idea that I want you to think, that you have different possibilities in accordance to which one you cleanse first or second, of course. Now, the world roots, or basically, sorry, the deep roots, this is what allows you that replay value. So you can transport armies. Right now I don't have any that can do that, but you can transport armies within these forests. All that you need to do is click on that deep root, and then you click on the army to transport it there. It's very easy, very easy. Now, Ember is now tied to technologies. It was a previous mechanic, as you can see here. So the idea is that you heal the forests, and then you can use these into the technologies. So these specific technologies, which is really great. You know, they change significantly how you play. You know, more casualty replenishment rate, more diplomatic relations with all factions, and ammunition for armies. You can see how effective these are. Offices. Let's speak about offices. They are very interesting. They provide mostly specific army or lord buffs, which allow you to have some interesting different army compositions. Okay, so for instance, over here you would go for a lord, of course, that would benefit from that regeneration to dryads, tree kin, and tree men units in that army. So of course, give this office to someone that will benefit from that, an army that will benefit from that. Now, these are different from other Wood Elves, so ensure that you familiarize with their army or faction one, because of course, you know, there are different offices for different lords, so be wary of that. Now, you're also one of the few factions that can build the shrine and then yield the Sword of Cain. Of course, you can always capture it, by all means, but you're the ones that can actually go there and control and make sure that the sword becomes a part of the world, really. Now, it's a very interesting campaign if you do that with the sisters, but I wouldn't advise it unless you know what you're doing, unless that you know that you are able to overcome the difficulties in terms of diplomacy and control that will come with the sword. Of course, you become a really powerful lord, but it has its negatives. Now, one that is added here is the Forge of Death. Now, this is basically just another resource built idea. So you gain these Death's favor from battles, and then you can use them into different items, and these items will of course develop a little bit better in terms of their you know, if you upgrade the gift. So basically you have the dragon ones. These are all different. Most of them have lord's army effects or specific effects for your heroes or lords, of course. So that's the main idea here. You have plenty of different options here. For instance, this one is a good one. Research rate is always important, especially in the early game where it's not as recurrent. So yeah. You also have Death's Blessings. So these are temporary. So you use 1 day's favor to enable flaming attacks for all elf units, all armies. So if you're about to fight someone that has regeneration, for instance, that would be a good idea. Be careful if you're fighting someone that has fire resistance. So don't put this up if you're fighting Chaos Dwarfs, for instance. You know, that sort of idea. Now, finally, you do have missions, by the way. I'll show them here. You do have missions that will allow you to confederate specific factions. So if you win one battle against the Bowmen of Orion, hey, you'll be able to have the opportunity to confederate them. If you win a battle against Norska, for instance, you'll be given the opportunity to confederate with Lornlarn Forest. So you also have this possibility to confederate most of the other minor Wood Elf factions, and it may prove to be extremely helpful. Finally, you do have Ariel, a specific legendary hero that you can obtain that is a beast of a caster. She's similar like to Lord Croak. Put her on any army and she'll be crazy good for you. Now, not a lot in terms of stats really. She can hold her own a little bit. She does have enough hit points to survive for a while and decent weapon strength. So she can go against other casters or maybe lower quality lords or heroes. She can go with that, but that's not the main idea. The main idea is all her abilities. She has heal abilities. She has damage abilities. She also has yet another damage abilities. So she has a mixture of spells that you can see here. Mostly from the lore of life and the lore of high magic, of course, which is a deadly combination actually. She also has the word of pain from dark magic. So all of these combinations, oh, I forgot it, it's actually dark life and high magic. Yeah, I forgot about that. So this combination, I remember that it was so punishing. Really punishing, so it's excellent for you to have a different experience. My idea would always to be putting Ariel alone in a specific army, like a normal lord without anything like legendary lord or anything like that, just so that she can shine. But up to you, of course. So in terms of province edicts, you do not have them. You already have quite good bonuses really with the trees and rituals of rebirth. Now you can consider the minor buildings perhaps as being sort of the edict based, especially because they do provide around the region. So for instance, casualty replenishment rate on that region, growth in all provinces. This one provides more growth in adjacent provinces and the recruitment cost in armies in the region. And the global recruitment duration -1 for armies in the region. So as you can see, these ones kinda act like edicts really, so pay some attention to these. Don't neglect them, especially in terms of the adjacent provinces, because very likely sometimes you have a province that is adjacent to 5, and certainly this is quite exponential. So that's quite a good idea. It's noteworthy, of course, to realize that none of these actually provide any income whatsoever. So there's no base income anymore from these minor settlements, which is kind of like a pain. Now, in terms of army stances, let me deny this guy here so that I can show you. In terms of army stances, you do have the typical forced march, of course, nothing to say there. You have ambush, so this is different than others because it only takes 10% movement points, which is excellent to have some sneaky activity during the campaign. Now you also have raiding, a good source of income because you're gonna need it. So less campaign movement range, of course, it requires 50% to put in that stance, but don't neglect this because of course you need alternative sources of income as well. Then you have encamp, which is the basic one, enables replenishment, immune to most attrition. That's the main take that you are given from this, and also the campaign movement range penalty, of course, 50%, remember. Finally, the tactical choice, the world routes. Similar to other underground stuff, you do have an ambush defense chance of plus 35%, so it's actually good to put yourself in world routes to ignore, a little bit of ambush. But remember, hostile armies can intercept you still, so it's kind of iffy. It's a good way to ensure that you can ambush, anywhere, that you can traverse with the world routes, and at least you're immune to some ambush. Now, of course, immune to most attrition, that is also excellent, so that you can actually go to places where you would have attrition and at least ignore that and benefit still from the use of the world routes. So yeah, a good tactical advantage for any Wood Elf player. So in terms of buildings, outside of the the trees, you have almost nothing. Some buildings that help you out around the provinces, the ones that I mentioned, just 2 units to recruit there. It's mostly good for fast growth, and fast growth you can. So your settlements also have no walls. They have lots of building slots, which is actually excellent. And the Witchwood specifically, let's talk about it. It has a specific landmark. It allows you to have Hawk Riders at tier 2 instead of tier 3, of course. And it also gives you the forest attrition for enemy armies in the region. And in addition, the Lord of the Recruit rank +3 for Lore of Beasts spellcaster. So it kind of incentives you into going into that lore. And of course, the missile strength +5%. So you need 6 buildings, actually 5 without the if you don't count the casters, for military. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buildings, but you also need this, the armory, to get specific ones. So it's kind of a bit of a problem. Sometimes the best way is to actually have just 2 forests, one dedicated to specific units and the other one dedicated to the other ones, so that you can enjoy the full roster. Now, all your provinces will actually be quite powerful, expensive, but actually profitable. And this is why. Because you'll also have a lot of good infrastructure, actually. The infrastructure you have something with income, growth, casualty replenishment rate, and it also produces some trade. Then you have a mostly dedicated for income and some wine resource production, which is also excellent. And yet another one for income. You can see that you're going to get a lot of income. It's good because you don't have a lot of income anywhere else, so yeah, you'll need these trees. And of course, lots of trade and control and growth to all provinces. So growth is never a problem for the Wood Elves, trust me, you're gonna find it everywhere. Now, research. I touched on the subject previously, but it's very good, gives good campaign buffs and of course great unit buffs as well. In particular, the ones that require Ember can drastically change how you play, because you're gonna get Ember and then you're gonna use these, and specifically you may want them for some specific units or for some specific usage. For instance, if you're going more into the trees, just get this one. More fire resistance for them, negating that weakness that they have. Or if you're going more into yet another more trees, maybe you want that ability to give them poison. Maybe you want to reload time reduction. Maybe you want more ammunition and diplomatic relations so that you can get good outposts. That is up to you. But Ember really makes sure that that you go into a different style of campaign. So overall, giving you a little bit more replay value, which I always like. So as always, we have Lord specific skills over there. We have the yellow line or caster. In this case, they don't cast, so they are just a melee, or in this case, a hybrid melee and ranged fighter, really. You do have, of course, the red line or army-based line, and then you have the blue line or campaign. Let's start with the blue line. For instance, you do have missile strength during ambushes and more ambush success chance, incentivizing you to try and getting even more ambushes. Remember that the stance only costs 10% movement, so it's also good to have. Not a lot here in terms of just more or less corruption, more income here. That would be nice. The income, of course, it may be the second one that you choose. In the other part, you do have reduced upkeep of 9%. Nothing really important here, but you do have less upkeep there. But the biggest one is that you actually have 15% casualty replenishment. This is like in Warhammer 2. It was overlooked perhaps by CA, so you still have the plus 15% contrary to others, which is always nice. Now, the red line appears to have mostly based around elves or trees, really, because you do have, you know, most of the stuff that are elite units here, and then you have the trees here. Now, the biggest issue is that it's quite expensive if you want different combinations here, so I'll show you a few later on, but they're kind of expensive, so you really have to plan out a little bit. So like going into these archer units, and maybe going into some front line, some elite front line here, or maybe some tree units. That is up to you. Now, you have 4 heroes. Speaking of the heroes, And with the Branch Wraith actually giving replenishment, which I always like to focus. Now, all heroes are really powerful. Some provide even specific bonuses to some units, for instance. So you do have the Glade Captain here. I like that they are mainly tier 2. The Waste Stalker, only really the Branch Wraith is tier 3. So you can get them very early in the game. And then you have the Spell Singer, of course, of Life, of Shadows, which is an excellent addition, and of Beasts. So they're all always really good. But note that it should be noteworthy that most of these guys have specific abilities that will help the army in itself. For instance, you have a passive ability that affects the range, the missile damage of allies in range. So you can use this guy alongside your missile units and they'll have a little bit more missile damage. So that sort of idea should always be noted, that they have some interesting abilities to enhance your army. That's the idea here. So here are all the redline skills for the Wood Elves. Some keynotes are all missile units nearly 1, and a division between the elite units and in terms of the infantry, and also in terms of the trees, because, you know, dryads are also here. The sisters in itself, let me talk about them. They focus a lot on the flying units, and you can definitely go with basically what would be a doom stack of Hawk Riders, if you wish, or Forest Dragons, by the way. I like to go with a more balanced composition, so I show you guys a few different ideas, still focusing on their strengths. That's basically the idea around here. You can see that they're kind of effective. This one is much more effective, which would be probably the one that I would bring out, but yep, all up to you, of course. Now, the Ancient Treemen, of course, they have skills that give a tremendous value to Treekin, so of course some compositions with those are in order. I already mentioned this in previous videos with the Wood Elves. And finally, I do give you some Sweeper armies, so some interesting combinations for you to try out. Of course, it includes the difficult task of merging trees and elves, like you see here. Notice that it overall means that it's a little bit lack of effective in terms of how many skill points you need for the red line for all those units. But yeah, this army would still be an amazing army to use, but of course only on a lord that you wouldn't need to spend too much skills on in other skills, of course. So as final notes, the sisters created yet a different playstyle for your typical army, and because you'll be focusing a lot on your legendary lord, this creates a rather unique campaign with flying units as the focus. Once more, you have immense replay value considering on how you decide to go about the trees, where you decide to go first, which is also one of the main ideas behind this campaign. The bonuses that you collect will differ from campaign to campaign if you choose different trees, for instance, and that is always a good idea for you to have, to ensure that you always have a different experience even playing the same faction. So there's a tremendous array of ally and naming combinations that you can have, outposts, so just go wild with it. For the most part, your army will consist of good infantry, great missiles, good cavalry, good monstrous infantry and single entities, decent flyers, with the sisters much better, of course. They lack artillery and they can be a micro-intensive faction, really. Not only faction, the race in itself, it can be micro-intensive. So, replenishment is good, plus the climate really helps with the sisters. I believe now it's time to take it up to the skies with the Sisters of Twilight.